Okay. Okay, so now we'll have Evans to start teaching on, yeah, okay, on Joshua.
All right, thank you, Mom. Tonight we are going to talk about a wonderful and faithful man of God by the name of Joshua, and he was a pivotal character a pivotal person. He was a paramount person because he was the one that allowed the children of Israel to eventually reach the promised land. So Joshua was an excellent example of someone who stood for God. He met many seemingly insurmountable obstacles with prevailing victory. Not discouraged by the size of the obstacles that challenged him, nor by the number of enemies he faced, Joshua accomplished remarkable feats. This was not by his own strength or ability, though, but by the power of God Almighty. Trusting in God, Joshua took action on his promises. He demonstrated clearly that staying for God requires trusting in God. Joshua was not a strong military and spiritual leader from birth. Rather, he grew and developed his trust in God over a period of time. He spent 40 years serving with Moses, and during that time, Moses assigned him to various responsibilities, which helped Joshua gain strength and build his trust in God. Finally, when Moses' death drew near, God instructed Moses to take Joshua to the tabernacle so that Joshua could be given the charge to lead the children of Israel. So now the first verse we're going to look at is going to be from the book of Deuteronomy. And we're going to go to chapter 31.
Chapter 31. 31, okay.
And I'll start at verse 7.
Okay.
And Moses called unto Joshua and said unto him in the sight of all Israel, Be strong and of good courage, for thou must go with this people unto the land which the Lord hath sworn unto their fathers to give them, and thou shalt cause them to inherit it. And the Lord, he it is that doeth go before thee, he will be with thee. He will not fail thee, nor forsake thee. Fear not, neither be dismayed. God told Moses to ordain Joshua and make clear to the people that Joshua would be their leader in Moses' stead. When Moses died, the reins of leadership passed to Joshua. In addition to the words Moses spoke as recorded in Deuteronomy, God himself encouraged Joshua to be strong and of good courage. And he had to earn that leadership because the children of Israel did not have any guidance. They were just wandering around the wilderness for 40 years. But there's two people that stood out, Joshua and Caleb. So that's why Joshua got the leadership eventually when Moses died. So now we're actually going to go to the book of Joshua.
Okay.
And we're going to chapter 1. All right, verse 9. Have not I commanded thee? Be strong and of good courage. Be not afraid, neither be thou dismayed. For the Lord God, thy God is with thee whithersoever thou goest. Why could Joshua be strong and of good courage? Because the Lord thy God is with thee whithersoever thou goest. Joshua will not lead the children of Israel with his own strength or ability, but with God's power and might. This required his trust in God. Standing for God requires trusting in God. Joshua grew and developed that so that he could maintain his trust in God in very challenging situations. Joshua stood for God by trusting in God to help him lead the children of Israel across the Jordan River into the promised land. God gave Joshua specific instructions to carry out, in order to be victorious in this very challenging situation. The priests were to take up the Ark of the Covenant and walk into the Jordan River, which was overflowing its banks at that time. Only when the feet of the priests were dipped into the brim of water were the waters cut up, according to Joshua 3:15. So as you can see, the people needed faith. The waters would not go down until they actually went into the water. Once they went into the waters were cut off, and it was easy peasy from there. But they had to have the faith to cross the Jordan. If they didn't have the faith to cross the Jordan, then they couldn't get to Jericho. Now we're going to go to chapter 3 in the book of Joshua. And I'm going to read from verse 17. And the priests that bear the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord stood firm on dry ground in the midst of Jordan, and all the Israelites passed over on dry ground until all the people were passed clean over Jordan. This certainly required focused believing and trusting in the promises of God. The result was that God not only stopped the waters at flood stage, but he also made the river bed to be dry ground for the children of Israel to cross over. Standing for God is not often the easiest route to take, but is the route to prevailing victory. Joshua stood firm on the promise of God, trusting in him wholeheartedly. And God did his part. He parted the river and made the ground dry for the children of Israel to cross over. There were many situations in which Joshua stood for God by trusting in him. He led the children of Israel when the walls of Jericho fell down, so he and his army could capture the city. Joshua 6:20. He led them in battle against the Amorites when great hailstones fell to defeat their enemy. More died with hailstones that day than the children of Israel slew with the sword. Joshua 10:11. Joshua even spoke to the Lord, and the sun stood still until the children of Israel had avenged themselves upon their enemies. Joshua 10:12 and 13. What a mighty man he was for God. Standing boldly, Joshua took action as he trusted fully in God and his word. At times, we are too confronted with obstacles that challenge us. The odds may be against us, so that it seems impossible for us to move forward. Joshua set a magnificent example for us to follow. He demonstrated clearly that staying for God requires trusting in God. As we approach challenges or obstacles, let's determine in our hearts that we will stand for God like Joshua. As we trust in God with all of our hearts, we too will prevail in victory. And I can attest to that because there have been many obstacles and barriers in my life, and over time I broke through them. And I knew that I was able to break through them because God was on my side. And of course, it took like-minded believers too, like these people in the way, to make sure that I got through. And I gotta give one honorable mention. Of course, it's gotta be my girl Tori. My Tori guided me through one of the toughest times in my entire life, and I thank her for her service. And I wish her all the best in Washington, D.C. And that is what I have to teach today.
Oh, thank you, Evans. And Joshua, what a mighty man that Joshua was. He stood for God. And Evans made it quite clear when he pointed out that we're going to have obstacles, but nothing did not stop him. He was trusting in God. He had faith in God. He was with Moses for 40 years, and Father trusted had Moses to train Joshua to go behind him after Moses was gone. Standing for God requires trusting in God. And it's easy to say, but it's not always easy to do, because when you're trusting God, many times there are going to be people that's going to speak against what you're believing in, but you have to be totally sold out and know no matter what other people say, my mind is made up. I am fixed. I have my eyes fixed on Father. And from there, I'm going to stand. So thank you, Evans. I think that's something all of us can learn from is Joshua, because that's not many of us could fool with all those people with all those different personalities, and they're murmuring and carrying on. I mean, I know I wouldn't have been one fit for that, I don't think. But to be able,
and 40 years of that on top of that.
40 years, yes. And finally, he was able to lead them into the promised land. So I say, good sermon. So is there anybody else that has anything they want to say?
Oh, yeah, I think it was great.
That was great. So
To know we have to be trusting in God to get the things that we need. And that's the thing, like you said, you know, you don't always, sometimes you don't always trust in God, but you just got to bring your mind back
That's
to
right.
the word.
That's
Know
right.
that the word is what will get you through anything.
You know, Betty always talks about deciding what it is and what the word says, and then just not being moved. You remember, I always remember when she gives her testimony, and she said she told the doctor she did not want details any more than she needed to know what, so she just wanted to know enough to pray about what she needed. She didn't want to go into all the side effects and all the things that can happen. I am quite different because I want to know every dot, every detail. Yeah, but she said she did not want to know every detail, and I understand where she's coming from, because, and I'm pretty sure Thea can attest to that. When you have medical knowledge, even when you're praying, you know, you got to figure out, you know, God got to do this, he's got to do this, he got to eliminate this, and this over here is a possibility, and all that rolls around in your mind. So Betty said that she just wants to know what she needs to pray for. She wants to know details. And maybe a lot of us who are detail oriented could take a little bit of that lesson from Betty and just say, Lord, I know it's in your hands, and I know you've already prepared a way, and I'm going to trust you. So I think that was a well given teaching, Evans. Thank you so much. And thanks to everyone